Hey guys, tonight we're plunging straight into the shadowy realm of medieval beauty, where looking stunning meant risking your life in ways that make modern trends seem tame. Imagine gazing into a foggy bronze mirror, your reflection pale as moonlight, but that glow comes from poisons seeping into your veins. Yeah, you probably won't survive this era's glow up, but hey, it's just a sleepy tale. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know what time it is and where you're watching from. I always love seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're huddled in a drafty stone room, the chill biting at your bare arms as dawn creeps through a narrow slit of window. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp wool and faint beeswax from last night's candle stubs. Before you, that warped bronze mirror mocks your every flaw. But in this 14th century world, perfection isn't optional. It's survival. And the crown jewel of it all, skin so pale it's practically translucent, veined like fine marble, screaming to everyone that you're no field-toiling peasant. Tanned hides meant labor under the sun, the mark of the lowly, while your ghostly whiteness, that's the badge of aristocracy, of lounging in shaded halls while others sweat for your supper. It's not just a look, it's a statement. I am above the dirt, above the toil, closer to the heavens. But pulling off this spectral vibe, brutal. You slather on a paste of vinegar and ground lead, feeling it tingle, then burn as it bleaches away any hint of color. The mixture corrodes your skin over time, seeping toxins that could leave you trembling or worse. But hey, at least you'll die looking elite. Talk about a killer complexion. Mainstream history tells us Queen Elizabeth I, though a bit later, embodied this with her impossibly white face in portraits, a trend rooted deep in medieval courts where paleness equated to untouchable status. Bloodletting was another go-to. You'd summon the local barber surgeon to slice a vein, letting crimson flow into a basin until you felt faint, all to drain that pesky excess blood and achieve the desired cadaver chic. Leeches might join the party, latched onto your temples or chest, sucking away impurities while you grit your teeth through the slimy squirm. Picture this quirky tidbit. In northern Italy, some ladies went full vampire, avoiding sunlight like it was the plague, literally, since the Black Death made everyone paranoid about anything that might weaken the body further. They'd smear on crushed pearls mixed with egg whites for that extra shimmer, believing it channeled lunar purity, though it often just left a sticky residue that attracted flies. Modern aside, sounds like the ancestor of those pricey sheet masks that promise radiance, but mostly just empty your wallet. And if you think that's wild, consider the fringe practice of rubbing lemon slices on cheeks to etch away plumpness, creating hollows that mimicked starvation without fully committing. Because who has time for actual famine when court's in session? You stare at your reflection, the lead paste drying into a mask that cracks slightly when you attempt to smile. It's worth it, right? That aristocratic aura keeps suitors circling and whispers at bay. But historians still argue whether this paleness obsession was truly widespread or more of an elite fantasy amplified by art and literature. Some say diaries from the time, scarce as they are, suggest only courtly women chased it relentlessly, while rural folk laughed it off amid their sun-kissed routines. Others point to merchant records of lead imports spiking, implying even middle-class aspirants dabbled, desperate to climb social ladders, one bleached layer at a time. The debate rages. Was it enforced beauty or just aspirational hype? As the morning light strengthens, you feel the sting subside into a numb glow, your skin now a canvas of enforced elegance. But this is just the base layer. The real torture awaits in sculpting features that scream nobility without uttering a word. You reach for the tweezers, eyeing your forehead. Next up, that vast expanse needs expanding, because nothing says, "I'm divine," like a hairline halfway to your crown. It's painful, plucking strand by strand. But in this era, beauty's brutality is the price of being seen as more than mortal. A light joke to ease the ache. If only they had invented wax strips back then. Imagine the screams echoing through castle halls like a medieval spa gone wrong. Your maid enters quietly, carrying a tray of more potions. Walnut oil to rub raw edges, vinegar-soaked bandages to discourage regrowth. She helps apply it, the acid biting like tiny flames, but you endure, whispering thanks through clenched teeth. This high forehead isn't vanity. It's rooted in religious iconography, where the Virgin Mary's smooth brow symbolized serene wisdom. Mainstream fact: portraits of noble women like Isabeau of Bavaria show exaggerated foreheads, possibly artistic license, but records hint at her aggressive plucking leading to patchy scars hidden under towering headdresses. Those hennins, cone-shaped hats tilted back, framed the forehead like a spotlight, veins pulsing blue under thin skin. Parchment perfect, as they called it. Quirky aside, some women dyed remaining fringe with chalk or bone dust for contrast, glowing unnaturally in candlelight, like ghosts at a fancy ball. And fringe theory whispers of French courts, where ladies pressed cold spoons to eyes, post-plucking to puff them artfully, mimicking sorrowful shadows. Because nothing boosts allure like looking perpetually on the verge of tears. You wince as the oil seeps in, scalp throbbing. But the mirror shows progress. Your brow stretches high, intelligent, pure. Yet, as you adjust your veil, doubts creep in. Was this self-inflicted or societal shackle? Historians still argue whether forehead fads trickled to the middle classes via aspiration or stayed locked in obsessive courts, with evidence from household inventories suggesting imitation was rife, blending desperation and devotion. The pain fades to a dull pulse, and you stand, ready for the day, pale, poised, and perilously beautiful. The pain fades to a dull pulse, and you stand, ready for the day, pale, poised, and perilously beautiful. But hold on, because that vast brow isn't done demanding sacrifices yet. In fact, it's the star of your morning ritual, a canvas that must stretch endlessly to prove your nobility and near divine grace. You lean closer to the mirror, tweezers in hand, pinching at the hairline with deliberate tugs that send sharp stings radiating across your scalp. Each strand, yanked free, is a step toward the ultimate medieval flex. A forehead so high and smooth it rivals the arches of a cathedral, symbolizing intelligence, spiritual elevation, and a soul unburdened by earthly messiness, like, say, a full head of hair. This isn't some quirky vanity project. It's a cultural mandate, woven into the fabric of courtly life, where a lofty brow whispers of purity and control. You work methodically, row by row, the discarded hairs piling like tiny defeated soldiers on the table. The goal? To push your hairline back an inch or two, creating that elongated silhouette seen in every illuminated manuscript and church fresco. It's agony, tears pricking your eyes as follicles protest, but you bite your lip and persist, knowing a low forehead marks you as common, impulsive, maybe even vulgar. In this world, your face isn't just yours. It's a billboard for your worth. And nothing advertises elite and enlightened like exposing more skin above your brows. Mainstream history spotlights figures like the women in Chaucer's tales or royal portraits from the 14th century, where exaggerated foreheads dominate, often enhanced by artists to flatter patrons. But real women chased it too. Diaries and medical texts mention treatments like rubbing the skin with pungent walnut oil or binding the forehead overnight with vinegar-drenched cloths to loosen roots and encourage fallout. The acid eats at the surface, leaving raw patches that sting in the breeze, but you soothe them with rosewater compresses, whispering to yourself that it's temporary. A light joke for the burn. If modern folks complain about threading, imagine explaining to your esthetician that you're aiming for a 5-head instead of a 4-head. Talk about raising the bar, literally. As you pluck, your mind wanders to the roots of this madness, tangled in religious art, where the Virgin Mary gazes out with a brow as vast and untroubled as the heavens. Her depictions, controlled by the church, set the template. No furrows of worry, no distracting fringe, just serene expanse symbolizing a mind free of sin's clutter. You model yourself after her, yanking until your reflection shows that same blank purity, even if inside you're seething at the unfairness. Quirky tidbit. In some rural pockets, women skip the trend entirely, too busy birthing calves or harvesting wheat to worry about scalp real estate. But at court, it was non-negotiable. Fringe whispers from Bavarian legends tell of ladies like Isabeau, who overplucked so zealously, her hair never grew back evenly, forcing her into ever more elaborate headdresses that weighed like crowns of thorns, neck aches for days. But at least she looked spiritually superior. You pause to dab at a bead of blood, the mirror fogging slightly from your breath. The high forehead ties into broader divine imagery, where smoothness equals calm mastery over emotions. Rage, joy, lust, all messy things that crease the skin. By erasing your natural line, you're erasing humanity, becoming a statue of virtue. Modern aside, it's like today's contouring hacks. But instead of chiseling cheekbones, you're expanding your skull space for that big brain energy vibe, minus the actual brains required to question why. Your maid hovers, offering a sip of herbal tea laced with mint to numb the throb. And you accept, feeling the cool liquid ease the fire. But as the plucking wraps up, you catch a different ache, the one from fasting the night before, hollowing your cheeks to complement this new expanse. It's all connected, this web of suffering disguised as style. Historians still argue whether the forehead obsession stemmed purely from religious icons or evolved from practical fashions, like accommodating those towering hennins that tilted back to showcase veins as delicate as river maps on parchment. Some scholars claim it was widespread, seeping into merchant homes via aspirational portraits, while others insist it was court exclusive, a luxury pain for the privileged few. Evidence from skeletal remains shows occasional scalp scarring on noble women's bones, hinting at lifelong commitment. But the debate lingers: divine devotion or class-driven delusion? With the last hair gone, you lean back, forehead gleaming raw but regal. It stings to touch, but in the soft morning light filtering through, it looks almost holy, a blank slate ready for the world's judgments. You adjust your coif carefully, ensuring the fabric frames rather than hides your handiwork, because visibility is key. Let them see your sacrifice, your elevation. A faint smile crosses your lips, sarcastic in the solitude. Who knew enlightenment came with such a headache? But there's no time to dwell. Next comes the eyes, those windows to the soul that must appear shadowed yet serene, distant yet inviting. You reach for the crushed berries, dabbing gently under your lids to mimic ethereal exhaustion, because nothing says, "I'm above it all," like looking one sigh away from transcendence. The process continues seamlessly, your routine a chain of tiny torments building the facade. As you blend the tint, remembering how court painters exaggerate these shadows for dramatic effect, you wonder if anyone sees the real you beneath. Quirky fact: some women press chilled rose petals to reduce puffiness post-cry, turning emotional leaks into beauty bonuses. Efficient, if a bit tragic. And fringe lore from English chronicles speaks of a lady who blinded herself with bleach splatters while lighting fringe for contrast, her servant swearing she aimed to match a saint's halo in a chapel mural. Art imitating life, or the reverse, with permanent consequences. Your reflection sharpens as the light grows, eyes now framed by subtle darkness that whispers of quiet suffering. Historians debate whether such enhancements were daily norms or reserved for portraits, with some arguing widespread use based on imported pigment records, others claiming it was artistic idealization, tricking us into believing everyone chased ghostly gazes. Either way, you blink at the mirror, ready to face the hall where judgments await, your features a carefully curated mask of medieval mystique. Either way, you blink at the mirror, ready to face the hall where judgments await, your features a carefully curated mask of medieval mystique. But before you step out, there's one more detail demanding your attention. Those pesky eyebrows, faint arches that dare to add expression to your freshly expanded brow. You grip the tweezers again, this time targeting the sparse hairs above your eyes, plucking them away with precise, eye-watering pinches until only the ghost of a shadow remains. Each tug feels like erasing a part of yourself, turning your face into a serene, unreadable slate. Because in this era, brows aren't for furrowing in thought or raising in surprise. They're distractions, vulgar hints of humanity that have no place on a noble woman's visage. The ideal is a blank canvas, smooth and emotionless, where feelings don't crease the skin or betray inner turmoil. You work steadily, the metallic snip echoing softly in the chamber, your reflection growing more statue-like with every hair removed. It's not about hating your natural look, though on bad days, it feels close. It's about conforming to a standard where a woman's face should evoke a holy relic, pure and impassive, like the marble saints in the chapel that stare blankly at eternity. Emotions are messy. They make you human. And being too human in these courts could whisper of sin or weakness. So you tweeze until your lids redden, dabbing the irritated skin with a cool cloth soaked in chamomile to calm the flush, all while the scent of herbal steam wafts up, a fleeting comfort in this ritual of removal. Mainstream history highlights this in the portraits of figures like those from the Burgundian court, where women's faces appear eerily uniform, brows thinned or absent to emphasize the high forehead and overall ethereal calm, a trend documented in fashion treatises of the time, but achieving it daily. That's where the sarcasm slips in. Imagine explaining to your modern dermatologist that you're aiming for expressive minimalism by yanking out every strand, only to get a lecture on ingrown hairs instead. A light joke to lighten the sting. If brows are the windows to the soul, medieval ladies were installing blackout curtains, because who needs soul gazing when you can just look mysteriously vacant? As you finish, your maid steps in with a small pot of white chalk paste, which you apply gingerly along the now bare ridges to heighten the contrast, making your skin glow even whiter against the void. It dries powdery, flaking if you so much as blink too hard, but it seals the look. Serene, silent, almost haunted. This erasure blends beauty with emotional restraint, turning your face into a fortress where joy or anger can't breach the walls. You practice in the mirror, trying to raise what's left of a brow. Nothing moves, just smooth expanse. Perfect for the courtly game, where showing too much feeling risks being labeled unladylike or worse, unpredictable. Quirky tidbit. In some corners of rural Europe, women bucked the trend entirely, keeping full brows for practical reasons like shielding eyes from sweat during harvest. But among the elite, it was a must-do, with tales of ladies dyeing their scalps for extra pallor boost, using powdered bone dust that left them smelling faintly of old crypts. Romantic, if you're into that gothic vibe. And a fringe whisper from French chronicles describes a noblewoman who plucked so obsessively her brows never regrew, forcing her to pencil faint lines with charcoal, only for rain to smear them mid-processional, turning piety into a streaky comedy. Modern aside, it's like today's microblading gone medieval, but without the numbing cream or Instagram before and afters, just raw determination and a prayer for steady hands. You tilt your head, admiring the effect in the dim light, your face now a clean slate, emotions tucked away like forbidden scrolls. It's expected, this restraint. Brows seen as distracting, pulling focus from the holy purity of your gaze. Laughter lines or frowns, unthinkable. They mar the facade. So you suppress a chuckle at the absurdity, feeling the chalk crackle faintly, a reminder that beauty here isn't flattering. It's obligatory, a daily discipline blending allure with ascetic denial. But as you set down the tools, a deeper twinge surfaces. Infection lurks in these primitive rituals, tools shared among household women. Hygiene, a hopeful afterthought. A slip could mean raw wounds, feverish nights, yet you persist, because letting brows creep back invites whispers of laziness or lost virtue. Historians still argue whether this eyebrow obsession was limited to fashion-obsessed courts or trickled into everyday households, with some citing middle-class inventories of tweezers as proof of imitation, others believing it stayed aristocratic, a cultural shorthand for femininity and grace that didn't reach the masses. Skeletal evidence shows occasional facial scarring on noble remains, suggesting commitment, but the debate persists. Widespread suffering or elite eccentricity? The chalk sets, your face now an unblemished void, ready to convey nothing and everything at once. You rise, veil in place, the absence of brows making your eyes seem larger, more poignant, like silent pleas in a world that demands you speak volumes without a word. A soft sarcasm bubbles up. Who knew blankness could be so expressive? But there's no time for reflection. The mouth awaits, that contradictory feature that must exist yet do so little. Lips sealed in demure mystery, while teeth hide like guarded secrets. You reach for the fennel seeds, chewing slowly to freshen your breath, because even silence has standards. The morning presses on, your routine chaining one erasure to the next, a tapestry of tiny denials weaving the perfect medieval mask. As you nibble the seeds, their anise bite sharpening your senses, you ponder the next layer. Those teeth, meant to be small, white, and utterly invisible, because flashing a grin could unravel the whole illusion of modesty. Quirky fact: some chewed sage leaves for whitening, a tip from monastic manuals that sounds reasonable until you realize it often led to gum irritation, turning piety into a perpetual wince. And fringe lore from Italian courts hints at women training to suppress smiles, lips pressed tight during lessons, lest joy reveal too much enamel and ruin the delicate balance. Your reflection nods back, browless and blank, as you prepare to contain even more of yourself. Historians debate whether facial restraint was formal education or subtle social pressure, with evidence from conduct books suggesting structured lessons for the elite, while others argue it was organic, born from relentless scrutiny that made every twitch a potential faux pas. Either way, you exhale slowly, lips parting just enough for a whisper, ready to face a day where beauty means blending into the background while standing out as flawless. Either way, you exhale slowly, lips parting just enough for a whisper, ready to face a day where beauty means blending into the background while standing out as flawless. But as your breath escapes, it brushes against the next frontier of this relentless facade, your mouth, that subtle contradiction sealed in soft flesh, where every curve and glint must toe the line between existence and erasure. You lean into the mirror once more, inspecting your lips with a critical eye, ensuring they're demure, mysterious, and above all, closed. Because in this medieval mosaic of ideals, a visible smile isn't just risky, it's a revelation, potentially unraveling the carefully spun web of modesty you've built since dawn. The mouth, you see, had to be present, obviously, for speaking vows or sipping broth. But it shouldn't do much beyond that. No boisterous laughter echoing through the hall, no toothy grins flashing during a lively tale about wayward goats, because your lips were meant to stay modestly sealed, hinting at self-control and inner poise. You practice now, curving them into the faintest upturn like a secret half-shared, ensuring no enamel peeks through. Teeth? Those were the real taboo, small, white, evenly spaced, and invisible 90% of the time. If someone caught sight of them, you were fumbling femininity, your grin a gateway to judgments of gluttony, vulgarity, or unchecked desire. It's a tightrope of restraint, where a wide mouth suggested appetite in all its forms, moral slipperiness that could taint your reputation faster than spilled wine on silk. You chew a sprig of parsley from the tray your maid left, its crisp bite freshening your breath while you ponder the irony. In a world of feasts and famines, your teeth must look like they've never tackled anything tougher than a ripe pear. Mainstream history echoes this in 14th century French romances, where heroes praise heroines' mouths as so delicate their teeth would not pierce a grape's skin. Romantic fluff that doubled as a blueprint for real women's restraint. But maintaining that ornamental bite? A nightmare. You'd scrub with salt and vinegar or burnt rosemary ash if you could stomach the grit, focusing on appearance over health. Decay be damned, as long as they stayed hidden. A light joke to sweeten the bitterness. Imagine orthodontists back then, straightening smiles with prayers and pumice, only to advise, now keep them locked away, lest you scare off a suitor with your enthusiasm. As you rinse with mint-infused wine, the cool tang lingering, you recall how moral implications laced every nibble. Large teeth or an open laugh linked to promiscuity. A woman too eager, too alive. Small, discreet ones signaled modesty, like a soft breeze rather than a gale. You'd avoid hearty foods at banquets, picking daintily to preserve the illusion, your jaw aching from suppressed yawns. Quirky tidbit. In Italian courts, women sprinkled ground cinnamon into their mouths before mingling, not for health, but to mask eel-scented breath from dubious diets, turning halitosis into a spicy secret that whispered elegance. And a fringe echo from monastic libraries offers gentle remedies like rubbing sage for whitening, reasonable until you learn some mixed it with brick dust for polish, eroding enamel into crumbles, pearly perfection rotting from the pursuit itself. You blot your lips with a linen cloth, tinting them faintly with pomegranate balm, just enough to catch the light without shouting invitation. Too red, and whispers of temptation follow. Too pale, and you fade into ghostly irrelevance. It's all about that Mona Lisa level restraint. A smile allowed but tight, ethereal, slightly melancholic, as if awaiting divine summons, rather than earthly fun. Modern aside, it's the ancestor of today's resting polite face, but with higher stakes, no open joy, because enthusiasm might deepen lines or reveal those forbidden ivories, ruining the powdered poise you've layered on since sunrise. But the cruelty simmers deeper, born with crooked or prominent teeth. Tough luck. Wealthier families might extract offenders to shrink the mouth's appearance, risking infection in a pre-antibiotic haze. All for marriage prospects. You shudder at the thought, your scrape with crushed eggshells leaving a faint sensitivity that throbs on cold mornings. Beauty here isn't joy, it's discipline, shrinking your voice, your appetite, your very presence into something metaphorically small. A second light joke. If teeth are the pearls of the mouth, medieval ladies treated them like buried treasure, hidden, lest pirates or priests deem you too flashy. As the balm sets, soft and aromatic, you test a whisper, lips barely moving, the fennel seeds doing their work to keep everything fresh and faultless. No dragon breath for you. That'd shatter the illusion quicker than a dropped goblet. Yet, even in this containment, a spark of rebellion flickers. Maybe you'll let a fuller smile slip later, just to feel the air on your teeth. Consequences be damned. But for now, you compose yourself, mouth a delicate line of discipline, ready to navigate the day's judgments, where every parted lip could speak volumes about your soul. Historians still argue whether these dental taboos were rigidly enforced through fashion or amplified by literature's ideals, with some claiming upper-class women adopted them fully via court manuals, while others suggest it was aspirational, rare diaries hinting that most chewed freely in private, saving restraint for public performances. Evidence from skeletal remains shows worn enamel on elite jaws, implying aggressive polishing. But the debate endures. Literal lockdown or poetic pressure? The mirror reflects your sealed serenity, mouth now a modest mystery. As you rise to layer on the next demand, your frame must echo this fragility, thin and ethereal, one skipped meal from sainthood, because robustness hints at indulgence, while slenderness screams spiritual superiority. You wave away the breakfast tray, stomach rumbling faintly, embracing the hollow that complements your contained smile. Quirky fact: some noble women chewed and then discreetly spat into napkins at feasts, a covert rejection predating any named disorder, all to flaunt control. And fringe tales from Siena speak of St. Catherine surviving on Eucharist alone, her gaunt form idolized, though modern eyes see shadows of deeper struggles. You straighten, feeling the lightness settle, your body a shrine to denial. Historians debate whether thinness reached all classes or stayed noble, with peasant vigor contrasting elite frailty in records. Yet merchant letters suggest imitation via herbs and broths. Either way, you glide forward, fragile yet fortified, the day's facade nearly complete. Either way, you glide forward, fragile yet fortified, the day's facade nearly complete. But as you move, a familiar lightness tugs at your core, not the grace of poise, but the hollow echo of an empty stomach, a deliberate void that's become your constant companion in this quest for the ultimate medieval silhouette. You pause by the window, the morning chill seeping through the glass like a whisper, and gaze at your reflection once more, noting how your gown hangs just a touch looser around the ribs, emphasizing that reed-like narrowness so prized in these halls. Being thin isn't merely fashionable. It's a declaration of fragility, an ethereal frame teetering on the edge of sainthood, where every skipped meal draws you closer to the divine and farther from the earthly sin of indulgence. You wave away the maid's offer of bread and watered wine, opting instead for a sip of herbal broth that barely registers on your tongue, its faint warmth doing little to fill the growing emptiness. In this world, slenderness signals virtue, a body so delicate it might shatter under a harsh word, proving you're above base hungers. Food, yes, but also the broader appetites that could mark you as weak or worldly. Full figures hint at gluttony, moral laxity, a soul weighed down by excess. But your slight form, it's holy, a living echo of monastic vows, where denying the flesh elevates the spirit. You feel the dizziness creep in, a soft haze that blurs the room's edges, but you embrace it, knowing it sharpens that consumptive glow others envy at court. Mainstream history enshrines this in the life of Saint Catherine of Siena, who fasted to extremes, surviving reportedly on Eucharist wafers alone. Her emaciated body, canonized as a model of devotion that influenced noble women for generations. You'd attend feasts but barely touch the platters, sipping wine with exaggerated daintiness, your narrow waist laced tight in gowns that allow no room for a full breath, let alone a meal. The silhouette demands it, long, narrow, almost spectral, with hips and bust modestly rounded, but the midriff flat as a prayer book, a light joke to soften the growl in your belly. If today's influencers skip carbs for beach bodies, medieval you skips everything for that heaven-ready vibe. Talk about eternal diet goals. As the broth settles uneasily, you recall the sensory toll. Headaches pulsing like distant drums, limbs weak as willow branches. Yet you persist, fainting dramatically during prayers to earn admiring murmurs rather than concern. This isn't mere vanity. It's inspired by saintly fasting rituals, where women like Catherine turned starvation into ecstasy, their visions hailed as divine while their bodies wasted away. You'd chew fennel to curb cravings or swallow herbs that induce quiet nausea, all to maintain the hollow cheeks and faint shadows that scream spiritual supremacy. Quirky tidbit. In aristocratic circles, holy anorexia became a badge, with families encouraging daughters to fast for prestige, seeing it as a fast track to familial sanctity, or at least impressive relics if things went south. And a fringe anecdote from Burgundian courts describes ladies competing in secret, tracking who could endure longest on air, and alleluias, their dizziness spun as rapturous trances during Mass. You lean against the bedpost, the room spinning gently, feeling the gown's fabric whisper against your protruding collarbones, a tactile reminder of your success. Beauty here is performative suffering, flaunting control in public while your insides twist privately. Modern aside, it's like those juice cleansers promising enlightenment, but instead of glowing skin, you get a halo of hallucinations and everyone applauding your lightness of being. The fashion reinforces it. Bodices cinched to emphasize frailty, sleeves draping to hide any lingering strength from youth's fuller days. But the quiet cruelty lingers. Your body isn't yours. It's a vessel for proving purity, shrinking metaphorically to match the literal. A second light joke. If curves were currency, you'd be bankrupt by choice, investing instead in that saintly stock. High risk, eternal reward, assuming you don't faint into the moat first. You'd recline at gatherings, picking at breadcrumbs, your faint smile masking the roar within, as admirers praise your grace, unaware of the napkin tricks or vomit-inducing tinctures that keep the illusion afloat. As morning advances, you steady yourself, the fragility now a familiar armor, ready to embody this inspired thinness through the day's devotions. Historians still argue whether starvation was a conscious emulation of saints or exaggerated by male chroniclers projecting fantasies onto female forms, with some citing corseted skeletons showing compressed organs as proof of widespread practice, while others believe it was a poetic idealization. Real women balancing health with hints of hollow for social gain. Evidence from letters describes broth-only diets among the elite, but the debate simmers: divine aspiration or gendered control. The haze lifts slightly as you move toward the door, your steps light from necessity, the ethereal frame a badge of both burden and beatitude. A third light joke. Who needs food when you can feast on compliments? But deep down, the emptiness aches. a silent protest against rituals that turn survival into spectacle. Yet you press on, the saintly inspiration fueling your fade. Because in these courts, looking one breath from paradise isn't a flaw, it's the pinnacle. Your chamber door creaks open, the hall beyond buzzing faintly with morning activity, and you glide into it, frame fragile as spun glass, inspiring awe and a touch of pity. The next layer awaits, that untouchable aura of purity, where virginity's code drapes over you like an invisible veil, demanding postures and symbols that scream innocence, even as life pulls you toward the opposite. You fold your hands demurely, eyes lowering, practicing the stance that blends maidenly grace with maternal mystery, another paradox in this endless performance. As servants bustle past, you adjust your veil, its fabric a soft barrier echoing the symbolic coverings that define chastity's visual language. Quirky fact, some wore lamb motifs on brooches, nodding to saints like Agnes of Rome, whose innocence was her shield, turning vulnerability into visual virtue. And fringe stories from Italian midwives reveal herbal restorations for reputation's sake, minor fixes to fake the untouched look. Because in this gaze-heavy world, perception trumps reality every time. You pause in the corridor, posture perfect, the thinness enhancing your otherworldly air. Historians debate whether purity standards shaped daily lives or stayed in male-penned doctrines, with conduct books pushing demure poses for all, yet private letters hinting at clever subversions like convent escapes for freedom. Either way, you embody it, fragile frame and veiled gaze merging into the ideal, seen, serene, silently screaming. Section 6. Either way, you embody it, fragile frame and veiled gaze, merging into the ideal, seen, serene, silently screaming. But as you navigate the corridor's stone chill, a deeper layer settles over you like morning mist, the unyielding code of virginity, that fantasy shroud demanding you appear untouched, innocent, and eternally chaste, even if life's realities have long since pulled you into marriage, motherhood, or the quiet negotiations of courtly alliances. You adjust your posture instinctively, shoulders softening, eyes lowering to the floor in demure avoidance, hands folding at your waist like a prayer half formed. Because in this intricate dance, chastity isn't just a state of being. It's a visual performance etched into every tilt of your head and fold of your gown, symbolizing a purity that looms larger than any real woman could sustain. The air in the hall carries faint echoes of servants' footsteps, but you glide through unnoticed, your steps measured and modest, ankles crossed when you pause, as if even walking too boldly might shatter the illusion. Virginity's code drapes over you like an invisible mantle, dictating symbolic clothing choices that whisper of untarnished grace. Veils cascading to hide tempting hair, gowns in soft blues evoking the Virgin Mary's mantle, fabrics rich yet restrained, avoiding bold slits or plunging lines that could hint at availability. You're expected to embody a walking contradiction, graceful yet innocent, mysterious yet transparent, a flesh and blood echo of the Divine Mother who birthed without blemish. It's exhausting, this perpetual pose, your body a canvas for moral projection, where loose hair signals seduction, visible skin invites scandal, and direct eye contact risks being read as forward, perhaps even impure. You recall your mother's lessons from girlhood, her voice low as she demonstrated the perfect ankle cross, the subtle head tilt that conveys angelic confusion without overt refusal, tools for navigating suitors while preserving that pristine aura. At 13, marriage talks begin, and suddenly every gesture matters. Sit with knees together, speak in murmurs, avoid anything that sparks too much interest, because passion is suspicious, a crack in the facade of selfless obedience. Mainstream history captures this in the legend of Agnes of Rome, the young saint canonized for defending her chastity to death. Her art depictions showing demure postures with downcast eyes and lamb symbols of innocence, a template that shaped conduct books for medieval girls across Europe. You'd wear veils not just for fashion, but as barriers, hair bound tightly post-wedding to signal transition from maiden to matron, because unbound locks waved like flags of uncontrolled desire. A light joke to ease the invisible weight. Imagine explaining to a modern date that your outfit's virgin-coded with extra layers for moral armor. Nothing says romance like dressing for eternal inaccessibility. But the stakes were real. In parts of Italy, laws enforced skin coverage for unmarried women, turning modesty into a legal mandate, with purity police patrolling like overly zealous chaperones. Symbolic choices extended to accessories, a simple cross pendant for devotion, gloves to hide hands that might touch too freely, even garlands of white flowers pinned discreetly, evoking bridal innocence without the actual wedding bells. You practice now, lowering your gaze as a night passes, your faint smile a shield rather than an invitation, because eye contact too long could spark rumors, sinking alliances faster than a leaky ship. Quirky tidbit: brides wore their hair down only on their wedding day, a ritual nod to virginity's farewell, after which it was braided or covered, lest you be mistaken for a loose temptress, as unbound tresses symbolized danger in folklore. And a fringe theory from Spanish chronicles suggests some midwives offered restorative surgeries or herbs to mimic virginity, minor interventions for reputation repair, because in this symbol-heavy society, visual proof outweighed truth, turning bodies into bargaining chips. Modern aside, it's like today's no makeup, but for morality. Look pure without trying too hard, or risk the side eye from everyone, from priests to potential in-laws. You feel the code's grip in your crossed ankles, the subtle ache from holding this pose, a reminder that even married, you're expected to retain a virginal vibe, maternal yet unsoiled, like Mary cradling the child while remaining eternally untouched. Artists bent reality to fit, painting women with expressionless brows and soft postures that screamed selfless virtue, influencing how you carry yourself daily. Never slouch, never stride. Always appear as if God's gaze is your constant companion. A second light joke: if virginity's a state of mind, medieval fashion made it a full-body workout. Core engaged, eyes averted, and don't forget to breathe, modestly. The pressure mounts in social whirlwinds. At gatherings, you'd whisper rather than speak, hands clasped to avoid gestures that might seem inviting. Your gown's high neckline a fortress against wandering eyes. Falling short wasn't just embarrassing. It could mean shunning, lost inheritance, Or worse, accusations of moral slippage that unraveled families. You think of those who subverted it quietly, poems traded in secret, flirts veiled in glances, rebellions wrapped in the very symbols meant to contain them. But the code persists, a visual language where every fold and stance tells your story before you utter a word. Historians still argue whether chastity's portrayals truly dictated daily postures or were idealized projections from male-dominated art and doctrine, with some citing church laws on veils as evidence of enforcement, while others highlight women's letters showing clever workarounds, like using symbolic lamb brooches as flirtation codes under pious guises. Evidence from convent records suggests escapes via nunneries for those dodging the pressure, but the debate lingers. Oppressive script or adaptable armor? A third light joke, virginity's code, where looking innocent means dressing like you're allergic to fun. But hey, at least the lambs on your jewelry get to frolic freely. You straighten your veil once more, the fabric a soft cage, embodying this paradox as you step into the great hall, where eyes assess your purity in a single sweep. The golden hair obsession awaits next, that luminous crown demanding scalding bleaches and sun-roasted sessions, because nothing crowns chastity like strands spun from mythic light. As courtiers murmur greetings, you tilt your head just so, the code's symbols shielding you while the morning sun glints off distant tapestries depicting Mary in eternal poise. Quirky fact, hair as loaded gun, loose for seduction, bound for control, with wedding days the rare unleash, turning transition into spectacle, and fringe whispers from Venetian midwives detail herbal hymenoplasties, restoring visuals for alliance's sake, because chastity's proof was often performative, a clothing choice as much as a life one. You mingle subtly, posture impeccable, the visual code your silent ally in this game of seen innocence. Historians debate whether symbolic clothing empowered through subversion or reinforced chains, with wardrobe inventories showing personalized veils as quiet rebellions, yet sermons decrying any deviation as sin. Either way, you navigate, chaste in appearance, if not always in thought, the facade holding firm. Either way, you navigate, chaste in appearance, if not always in thought, the facade holding firm. But as you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a passing silver tray, carried by a hurrying servant, one element stands out unfinished. Your hair, that literal crown of your carefully constructed purity, demanding transformation into luminous strands of gold to complete the saintly illusion. You return to your chamber briefly, seating yourself by the window where sunlight filters in, like reluctant grace, and reach for the small vial of homemade bleach, its pungent scent already rising as you uncork it, a noxious brew of lye, alum, and stale urine, soaked overnight to lift pigment and bestow the heavenly hue that signifies not just beauty, but exotic allure and untarnished virtue in this symbol-saturated world. Blonde isn't merely a color, it's a mythic emblem, evoking angels and saints in church murals, where golden locks halo divine figures, even from dark-haired regions, turning hair into a shorthand for youth, holiness, and otherworldly grace. You pour the mixture onto a cloth, dabbing it through your tresses section by section, the liquid seeping cold against your scalp before warming into a sharp burn that makes your eyes water. It's a ritual of endurance, sitting still as the sun bakes it in through a wide-brimmed hat with the crown cut out, your hair roasting like a sacrificial offering while you fan yourself lazily, ignoring the chemical fumes that could scorch more than just follicles. This pursuit of spun gold strands promises elevation. Blonde means delicate, divine, destined for ballads and blessed unions. But the cost: scalp blisters, brittle ends, and a lingering farmyard whiff that no rosewater rinse fully erases. Mainstream history illuminates this fixation through figures like Lucrezia Borgia, whose Renaissance-era golden mane, possibly natural or enhanced by early bleaches, was preserved in jewelry as diplomatic tokens. Her allure wielding influence across courts and turning tresses into tools of power. You'd follow recipes from whispered manuscripts, mixing saffron and lemon juice with goat's urine for that sun-kissed shimmer, applying it generously before perching outdoors, hat framing your locks like a bizarre solar oven. The goal: lift away darkness, aligning yourself with the celestial, because brunettes or redheads often carried undertones of danger in poetry, seductive sirens or morally ambiguous temptresses, while blonde evoked the unattainable maiden, pure and tragically fragile. A light joke to cut the sting: if blondes have more fun today, back then they had more fumes. Nothing says party like smelling like a barnyard alchemist's mishap. As the bleach sets, your scalp tingling toward numbness, you ponder the symbolism's depth. Golden hair didn't just beautify, it sanctified, fueling courtly tales where knights knelt for sun-haired ladies, their tresses a beacon of high drama and heavenly favor. You'd avoid wigs, too deceptive, too theatrical, and sweltering under veils, opting instead for veils dyed with golden hues to fake the glow peeking through, a subtle cheat when genetics failed. But the real allure lay in its exotic rarity, imported from northern myths, yet demanded everywhere, turning your head into a canvas of aspiration. Quirky tidbit: in 14th century England, a noblewoman reportedly went blind after bleach splashed her eyes during a session to match a painting's ideal shade, her quest for angelic locks ending in darkness. Art's revenge, perhaps, with servants attesting to her halo-chasing hubris. And a fringe legend from Florence whispers of men penning odes to sun maidens, their imagery pressuring women to conform despite risks, like hair loss from repeated urine soaks that left scalps sore and smelling of summer stables. You shift uncomfortably, the sun beating down through the hat's opening, your hair steaming faintly as pigment fades, the process a slow alchemy of suffering for sanctity. It's not fair. Darker-haired women from southern climes faced portrayal as enigmatic threats, their locks laced with racial whispers of lesser grace, while blonde became better, a shortcut to love and legend. Modern aside, it's like today's highlighting trends, but swap the salon chair for a urine bucket and add a side of existential symbolism. Who knew beach waves started with medieval beachless baking? The bleach dries crunchy, strands straw-like and fragile. But in candlelight later, they'll shimmer, catching eyes and approvals from priest to paramour. Yet, the ritual's toll mounts. Repeated applications lead to infections, open sores, or that unmistakable odor clinging like guilt, forcing you to chew cloves for cover. A second light joke: Golden hair as a diplomatic gift? Sounds romantic until you realize it's mailing dead cells. Nothing says alliance like a locket of chemically fried follicles. You rinse finally, lemon slices rubbed in for shine, the water running murky with lifted color, leaving your mane lighter, more blessed. A visual vow of purity that masks the pain beneath. As you comb through the damp results, feeling the brittleness snap under fingers, you sense the exotic allure's pull. Blonde turns heads, secures status, but at what price? Historians still argue how much pressure women felt to chase this ideal, some claiming it was confined to elite circles with resources for ruinous recipes. Others insisting it permeated merchant classes via booming visual culture in Venice or Florence, where appearance equaled opportunity, genetics be damned. Evidence from dye import logs shows spikes in saffron shipments, hinting at broad adoption. But the debate endures. Class-exclusive fetish or cultural contagion? A third light joke. Bleach and pray. That's the medieval motto for hair care. Because if it doesn't work, at least you've got heaven's backup plan for bad hair days. Your locks dry into a glowing halo, the burn subsiding to an itch, ready to frame your chaste visage in courtly light. But the day's demands evolve. Next, the battle against natural scents, where perfumes wage war on hygiene's lapses, turning your body into a floral fortress amid the era's unwashed realities. As you pin a strand back, the chamber fills with lavender's hint from a nearby sachet, a prelude to masking what purity's code can't conceal. Quirky fact: saints' bodies supposedly smelled of roses post-death, an odor of sanctity exaggerated to bolster scent ideals, pressuring living women to emulate even in sweat-soaked gowns. And fringe tales from Brittany laud Isolde for floral freshness after journeys. Likely poetic license for heavy perfume habits that covered travel's tolls. You spritz rosewater lightly, the mist cooling your scalp, embodying allure while veiling the human underneath. Historians debate whether fragrance obsession was pragmatic hygiene or symbolic piety, with court letters obsessing over scents as status markers, yet rural accounts suggesting simpler washes sufficed for the less scrutinized. Either way, you inhale deeply, golden and guarded, stepping into the scented fray. Either way, you inhale deeply, golden and guarded, stepping into the scented fray. But as you cross the threshold into the bustling hall, a subtle wave hits you. Not the admiring glances you'd hoped for, but the underlying musk of unwashed linens and lingering sweat that clings to the air like an unwelcome guest, reminding you that beneath the golden halo and chaste veils, the real battle for beauty rages against the body's betrayals. You pause discreetly by a tapestry, dabbing rosewater from a vial onto your wrists and neck, the floral mist blooming to mask any hint of your natural scent. Because in this medieval melee, hygiene isn't just health. It's a strategic armor, perfumes clashing against poor bathing habits to preserve the illusion of divine freshness amid a world where water was as suspect as sin. The morning light slants through arched windows, illuminating dust motes that dance like tiny courtiers. But you focus on the ritual, tucking a sachet of dried lavender and thyme into your bodice, turning your gown into a walking herb garden that whispers elegance with every step. Baths, rare luxuries, viewed with suspicion. Hot water supposedly opened pores to disease or demonic influence, a medical myth that kept most dipping into basins sporadically, if at all. Instead, you'd rely on these scented survival strategies, dousing yourself in oils of violet or spiced vinegar to overpower the inevitable funk from heavy layers and infrequent washes. It's a constant skirmish, your nose the frontline soldier, ensuring you smell like a meadow in bloom, rather than the reality of castle life, where sweat and stables mingled freely. Mainstream history notes this in the household accounts of figures like Eleanor of Aquitaine, whose courts imported vast quantities of rosewater and aromatic resins, using them not just for allure, but to signal refinement in stuffy, overcrowded halls. You'd launder your linen shifts more often than your skin, rubbing scented oils into hair that's gone weeks without a proper rinse, rosemary and clove to disguise the buildup, creating an illusion of cleanliness that's more olfactory trick than true scrub. A light joke to waft away the grimness. If modern deodorant ads promise 48-hour protection, medieval you aimed for 48-day camouflage. Nothing like outlasting a siege with just a sprig of mint and sheer willpower. As you move through the hall, greeting a lady with a nod, you feel the sachet shift against your skin, releasing a puff of thyme that covers the faint tang from yesterday's exertions. Perfume battles were essential. Without them, even the most golden-haired virgin could plummet in esteem, her odor whispering of moral decay or peasant roots. You'd carry pomanders, perforated balls filled with ambergris or musk, dangling from your belt like jeweled weapons, or pin garlands inside sleeves for discreet whiffs during long audiences. The goal? Stink better than the rest, turning body odor into social armor that shielded your status as surely as a knight's plate. Quirky tidbit. A 14th century beauty manual advises boiling rosemary in wine for a hair rinse that cheers the brain, while masking lice infestations, a common itch turned into aromatic opportunity, practical if you ignore the wine-stained scalp, and a fringe custom from urban bathhouses before church crackdowns labeled them sinful gateways to lust, saw women sharing scented oils in communal steams, blending hygiene with hushed gossip until regulations shuttered the spots, forcing home remedies like basin wipes laced with shame. You inhale your lavender cloud, feeling fortified as a knight approaches, his eyes lingering without offense. Your scent signals poise, not peril, but the war wages on. Unwashed hair ecosystems demand constant vigilance, combs dipped in vinegar to deter crawlers, prayers muttered for pest-free plaits. Modern aside, it's like today's dry shampoo revolution. But swap the aerosol for ash and add a dash of existential dread about plague-ridden pores. The church's influence loomed large, equating cleanliness with spiritual vulnerability, yet expecting women to radiate immaculate fragrance, a contradiction that left you marinating in layers while pretending transcendence. A second light joke. Body odor as the original social distancing. Nothing clears a room faster than forgetting your pomander, unless it's a rival lady accidentally spilling her less floral truth. You'd adapt, stuffing undergarments with mint or marjoram pouches, turning corsets into potpourri satchels that rustled softly with movement, a subtle symphony of survival. For the less affluent, public bathhouses offered respite until deemed too risky, their closure pushing women toward modest basin routines at home, cloth and caution their only allies. Yet, in elite circles, scent became a power play. Arrive at court, wafting like spring rain, and whispers praised your piety, falter with a whiff of reality, and gossip branded you careless, perhaps unchaste. The hall's chatter rises, but you navigate with perfumed poise, the strategies embedding deeper into your routine. Historians still argue whether this fragrance fixation was driven by practical hygiene needs or deeper symbolic piety, with some citing import records of exotic resins as evidence of widespread status signaling, while others believe it was exaggerated in court documents. Real women in rural areas opting for simpler herb rinses without the spiritual overlay. Evidence from letters obsesses over sweet-smelling souls. But the debate persists. Necessity or narrative? A third light joke. Saints smelling of roses after death. Must be nice. Meanwhile, you're just praying your lavender holds through lunch without wilting like last week's resolve. Your steps carry you toward the cosmetics chest, where the real toxins await. Lead-laced creams promising pallor, but delivering peril. Because if scents shield the nose, makeup wages war on the skin itself. As a servant offers a scented glove, another armor piece, you slip it on, the leather infused with clove to guard your hand's freshness. Quirky fact, some wore scent masks, perfumed cloths held to the face during encounters, turning conversations into aromatic veils that hid more than breath. And fringe theories link relic odors, saints' sweet post-mortem scents, to beauty pressures, exaggerating holiness to guilt women into perpetual fragrance. Because if even the dead must smell divine, what chance for the sweating living? You accept a pomander from your maid, twirling it absently, the perforated silver releasing resinous notes that fortify your facade. Historians debate whether bathhouse shutdowns stemmed from moral panic or plague fears, with urban regulations citing sin, yet medical texts blaming water for illness, suggesting a blend that forced women's scented innovations. Either way, you twirl onward, armored in aroma, the next layer of lead awaiting to seal your poisonous perfection. Either way, you twirl onward, armored in aroma, the next layer of lead awaiting to seal your poisonous perfection. But as you approach the ornate wooden chest in your chamber's corner, its lid creaking open to reveal jars of dubious pastes and powders, the true mayhem unfolds. The world of medieval makeup, where promises of flawless skin come laced with toxins that corrode more than just blemishes, turning your daily glow-up into a slow dance with death itself. You dip a finger into the thick white cream, ceruse they call it, a blend of vinegar and lead aged in clay pots until it congeals into something deceptively smooth, and smear it across your cheeks, feeling the cool weight settle like a second skin, bleaching away freckles, spots, and any whisper of life's imperfections to craft that no circulation needed pallor. The paste dries taut, pulling at your pores as it masks the rawness from earlier plucks and burns, but you blend it carefully with a linen cloth, ensuring even coverage that screams aristocratic untouchability. Lead isn't just a whitener, it's a veil over reality, hiding the stress of survival in a plague-ridden age, making you appear as unblemished as a manuscript saint. But the price simmers beneath. It seeps into your bloodstream, promising tremors, graying skin, or organ whispers of failure down the line, all for the privilege of looking like you've never seen the sun or a sorrow. You add a touch of mercury-based spot remover to a lingering blemish, the metallic tang faint in the air, its promise to fade. Sun damage, or age marks, coming with side effects like hallucinations or nerve twitches. Beauty delivered via slow poison, because nothing says peak perfection like risking your sanity for smoothness. Mainstream history exposes this through cases like an English noblewoman whose daily ceruse habit left her skin so ravaged she relied on maids to apply it around open sores, yet she persisted, masking the damage with more of the same in a vicious cycle echoed in court records of the era. You'd powder it down with rice flour or ground alabaster for a matte finish, the dust tickling your nose as you sneeze delicately, because even application mishaps must be graceful. A light joke to dust off the dread. If today's foundation builds confidence, medieval makeup built coffins, layer by layer, until you're buried in your beauty regime. As the ceruse sets, cracking faintly when you test a whisper, you reach for the rouge, crushed cinnabar, another mercury-laden villain tinted red to hide the lead's ashen toll, dabbing it on cheeks for that ironic flush of health. Too much, and you look feverish. Too little, and the ghostly base dominates. But the balance is key, promising virtue in visuals while the chemicals wage internal war. Makeup here links directly to morality. Smooth white skin symbolizes a soul untainted, wealth untouched by labor, a clean exterior mirroring inner grace, or so the sermons claim. You'd avoid overdoing it, lest blisters form from the poison's bite, soothed temporarily with rosewater and pearl dust that offers shimmer, but no real relief. Quirky tidbit. Some rural women opted for snail slime masks, believing the mucus rejuvenated without toxins. A slimy secret that accidentally aligns with modern Korean skincare. Medieval ladies slithering ahead of the curve. And a fringe practice from remote households involved bread dough and honey facials, homemade and harmless, but elite circles scoffed, sticking to lead for that aristocratic edge, even as it edged them toward early graves. You blend the rouge with a feather's touch, the mirror showing a face now ivory perfect, but the tightness hints at the corrosion brewing below, where enamel might yellow or bones ache mysteriously by your 30s. It's a chemical skirmish in slow motion, hiding one flaw only to birth another. Yet you persist, because flaws aren't just ugly, they're suspect, marks of a flawed spirit in a world where beauty equals blessedness. Modern aside, it's like outlasting a bad filter in real life. But instead of app crashes, you get organ glitches. Nothing photogenic about that fallout. The irony bites deeper. Women chasing this hardest often damage themselves most. Ground coral polishes, stripping enamel until teeth crumbled. A pious smile rotting from the effort. A second light joke. Mercury for spots. Sounds like a stellar idea, until you realize it's less spotless and more spotty memory, with tremors turning your hand shaky mid-application. You'd seal it with a light veil of rice powder, inhaling the faint starch scent that covers the metallic undernotes. Your face now a toxic masterpiece, ready for mass or mingling. But the cycle never breaks. Evening removal reveals sallow undertones, irritated patches begging for more cream tomorrow, a loop of self-inflicted decay disguised as discipline. The chamber's light strengthens, casting your powdered features in soft relief, but you feel the subtle burn, a reminder that perfection's promise is laced with peril. Historians still argue whether these cosmetics served beauty or social control, some viewing them as empowering tools for women to craft identities in restrictive worlds, others as patriarchal traps reinforcing hierarchies through poisoned palettes, with merchant ledgers showing widespread sales suggesting broad adoption beyond nobles. Evidence from exhumed remains reveals lead traces in bones, implying lifelong exposure, but the debate rages: agency in application or enforced erosion? A third light joke: lead makeup, because who needs enemies when your vanity table's plotting your downfall? One flawless layer at a time, you stand, face aglow with artificial radiance, the mayhem managed for now, but the sickly chic allure beckons next, where fragility blurs into fashionable frailty, illness aestheticized as divine delicacy. As a maid adjusts your sleeve, the powder shifts slightly, a faint crack revealing the human beneath, but you smooth it away, embodying the probe into poisons that deliver not just perfection, but a perilous path to it. Quirky fact: some mixed snail mucus with egg whites for rejuvenation, a gooey alternative that worked mildly without the death wish, proving not all chaste toxins, just the fashion-forward fools. And fringe records from Spain detail a lady whose cherouse addiction turned her grey as a ghost, yet she upped the dose, hiding it under more red, a colourful cover for creeping doom. You glide out, makeup mayhem sealed, the toxic base enhancing your ethereal edge. Historians debate whether men's rare dabbles, actors or the flamboyant, normalized it or highlighted gender divides, with portraits showing smooth male faces in some courts, yet treatises decrying vanity unless beautifully hypocritical. Either way, you proceed, poisoned yet poised. The next sickly sensation awaits to blend illness with holy hotness. Either way, you proceed, poisoned yet poised. The next sickly sensation awaits to blend illness with holy hotness. But as you drift into the great hall's flickering torchlight, a wave of deliberate dizziness washes over you, not from the lead's creeping grip or the hollow in your belly, but from the cultivated frailty that's become your signature, a look so delicately unwell it teeters on the divine, where pale cheeks and shadowed eyes whisper of spiritual depths rather than simple sickness. You settle onto a cushioned bench, arm draping languidly over the side in a pose that's half exhaustion, half theatre, feeling the room's warmth press against your chilled skin like a judgmental gaze. Because in this medieval mindset, appearing one faint away from the afterlife isn't a flaw. It's the height of chic, blurring the lines between consumptive woe and holy allure in a way that turns suffering into style. The air hums with soft conversations and the crackle of the hearth, but you lean back slightly, letting your eyelids flutter as if the weight of existence is just too much, embodying that sickly chic where fragility isn't hidden. It's flaunted, a visual hymn to endurance wrapped in elegance. Your skin, already lead bleached to translucence, takes on a bluish tint under the flames, lips parted in a subtle sigh that hints at inner turmoil. or transcendent peace, whichever the observer prefers. It's not about being healthy, it's about looking perishable, a fading rose in a poet's lament, where hollow cheeks and thin wrists evoke emotional sensitivity and artistic soul, all while signaling you're too refined for this crude world. You feel the bench's velvet yield under your slight weight, a sensory nudge that reinforces the illusion. Strong bodies labor. Yours exists to inspire awe and quiet pity. Mainstream history spotlights this in the courts of Burgundy, where ladies competed in pallor and poise, fainting during services or dances to recover with trembling smiles, their consumptive glow aestheticized as a mark of breeding, documented in chronicles that praised such delicacy as closer to God. You'd cultivate it with skipped meals or berry dabs under eyes for artificial shadows, pressing chilled spoons to encourage puffiness that mimics tragic sleeplessness, because nothing elevates allure like appearing haunted by crusader ghosts or unspoken prayers. A light joke to soften the swoon. If today's No Sleep Club brags about dark circles for hustle cred, medieval you rocked them for halo points. Exhaustion as the original flex, minus the coffee. As the hall fills with more nobles, you catch admiring glances, your frail frame blurring illness into attractiveness, where a cough becomes coquettish, a pallid flush holy fire. It's woven into Christian thought. Suffering redeems, saints beautiful in affliction. So your one look elevates you, assumed spiritually advanced, rather than simply starved. You'd recline dramatically, fan fluttering to hide a genuine waver, the gown's tight bodice exaggerating narrowness, sleeves draping like wilted petals. The ideal. Swan-necked, reed-thin, a silhouette that says, I subsist on whispers and worship, illness turned accessory in a society that romanticized the broken. Quirky tidbit. Some pressed beetroot under eyes for weeping shadows, crafting tragedy on purpose, like proto-goth makeup for that doomed heroine vibe. Efficient if you're aiming for ballads about your untimely grace. And a fringe practice from northern courts involved drinking only rosewater before events for bloodless skin, a week-long prep that left you dizzy but dazzling, hydration sacrificed for that ethereal edge. You shift subtly, feeling the bench's edge dig into your hip, the sensory bite a reminder of real frailty beneath the facade. Nutrition scarce, diseases rampant, yet society spins it as stylish, consumptive chic, a prequel to later eras' tuberculosis romance. Modern aside, it's like today's clean girl aesthetic, but swap the green juice for herbal purges and add a dash of divine delusion. Who knew looking half gone was the original wellness trend? The fashion aids it. Gowns cinched under the bust for elongated torsos, fabrics flowing to mask any lingering vigor, turning you ornamental, a fragile bloom in a stormy garden. A second light joke. Frail as a fashion statement, sounds fabulous until you faint mid-minuet. Nothing kills the vibe like face planting into the feast platter. You'd enhance with subtle makeup tricks, darkening under eyes for depth. But the line blurs, genuine ailment or artful ache. In poetry, you're compared to melting snow or ghostly maidens, perishable prettiness that captivates because it's fleeting, life and death dancing in your shadowed gaze. The creepy thrill. Even corpses of saints were worshipped if preserved, their stillness seductive, silence complete. No demands, just eternal appeal, filtering into secular art where women mimic relic poise. But the hall's warmth builds, your head light from the morning's denials, and you wonder at the cost. Real health traded for this holy hotness, where swoons earn sympathy, coughs compliments. A third light joke: consumptive looks, because why fight the flu when you can flaunt it as your signature scent? Ode de enlightenment. You'd recover gracefully, a handkerchief pressed to lips, the performance peaking in admiration for your delicate constitution. Illness aestheticized until it consumes you wholly. The morning advances, your sickly sensation a veil of vulnerability that draws eyes without inviting touch. Holy attractiveness in every labored breath. Historians still argue whether this frail ideal was conscious artifice or amplified by actual maladies in a malnourished age, with some citing skeletal evidence of warped bones from tight lacing as proof of deliberate cultivation, while others believe chroniclers exaggerated for dramatic effect, real women blending genuine sickness with stylized suffering for social gain. Evidence from medical texts warns of excessive delicacy, but the debate simmers: performed piety or pervasive plague. Your fan flutters faster, the sensation blending with the hall's hum, as the focus shifts to men's burdens, where chiseled strength hides its grooming agonies, proving beauty's brutality spares no one. You spot a knight across the room, his sharp jaw and groomed visage a mirror to your masked pains, the masculine mandates awaiting their turn in this endless spectacle. As ladies murmur nearby, you note their similar pallor, the chic shared like a secret ailment. Quirky fact: in some chapels, saintly corpses lie in glass, wax masks preserving youthful frailty, worshippers kissing coffins for blessings, death as the ultimate beauty inspo. And fringe theories tie relic viewings to court fads, where women mimicked mummified serenity, turning live poses into previews of posthumous praise. You sigh faintly, the sickly allure holding, holy and haunting in equal measure. Historians debate whether it persisted into later eras as romantic suffering or faded with medical advances. Portraits showing elongated faces as idealization, yet diaries hinting at deliberate diets for the look. Either way, you embody it. Frail frame a fragile flame in the hall's glow. Either way, you embody it. Frail frame a fragile flame in the hall's glow, but your eyes drift to that knight across the room, his sharp jaw cutting through the torchlight like a blade, his posture rigid yet graceful, a living statue of medieval masculinity that hides its silent tortures. You watch him adjust his tight doublet, the fabric clinging to a lean, wiry frame that screams both poet and warrior, because in this world, men aren't spared the brutal beauty standards. They're just carved differently, expected to balance chiseled strength with courtly polish, all while masking the painful grooming that sculpts their heroic facade. His clean-shaven face gleams, brows subtly shaped, hair curled just so, but beneath the shine lies a regime as punishing as your own, a daily grind of plucking, oiling, and posing that proves beauty's demands spare no one in these gilded halls. You lean back on your bench, fan fluttering to cover a faint smile, noticing how he moves with deliberate ease, each step a performance of effortless valor. Medieval masculinity demands he look tall, but not lanky, muscular, but not bulky, with a high forehead plucked as meticulously as yours to signal refinement over brute force. His hands, delicate yet calloused from swordplay, must hint at both poetry and power, capable of penning a sonnet or slaying a foe before breakfast. You imagine him in his chamber at dawn, tweezing stray facial hairs with the same wincing focus you gave your brows, using vinegar tonics to cleanse his skin of blemishes. Because a pimple here isn't just a flaw. It's a mark of weak character, a whisper of lust or laziness that could tarnish his knightly aura. Mainstream history points to figures like Edward of Woodstock, the Black Prince, whose portraits capture the ideal. Sharp nose, soft curls, and a physique honed for war, yet dressed for courtly admiration. His tragic illness only enhancing his status as a doomed, beautiful hero in chronicles. Men like him endured painful routines, shaving with blunt blades, risking cuts in a world without antiseptics, or applying astringent washes that stung worse than a wasp's jab, all to keep skin clear and noble. A light joke to ease the tension. If modern guys stress over razor bumps, imagine medieval knights fretting over a nick that could scar their godly cheekbones. Nothing says chivalry like bleeding for a flawless face. As he bows to a lady, his hose outline every muscle in excruciating detail. Codpieces so bold they border on scandal, yet legally tempered in some courts to avoid outright offense. Fashion for men is as restrictive as your bodice. Tights revealing legs with no mercy for flaws. Doublets laced to emphasize a narrow waist without a hint of softness. You picture him struggling into those hose, seams straining as he adjusts for the perfect silhouette, sweating beneath layers that must billow dramatically during a dance or duel. The sensory toll hits you, the chafe of tight fabric, the itch of oiled hair under a stiff collar, the constant performance of looking brave, devout, and effortlessly cool on horseback, all while suppressing any grunt of discomfort that might betray his humanity. Quirky tidbit. Some knights wore beauty patches, tiny silk spots glued to hide blemishes or signal flirtation, a cheek patch whispering, "I'm charming," a brow one hinting poetic danger, a borrowed trick from ladies that risked mockery if spotted mid-joust. And a fringe theory suggests courtly love poetry wasn't just for women. It controlled men too, painting them as suffering devotees to unattainable maidens, forcing real knights to perform fictional gallantry. Love as an art form, not a feeling, with every bow and ballad a test of masculine worth. Modern aside, it's like today's gym bro aesthetic, but swap protein shakes for vinegar scrubs and add a lute solo to prove you're sensitive. Toxic masculinity with a medieval twist. You catch his eye briefly, his nod practiced to perfection, but you sense the exhaustion behind it, the same weight you carry under your powdered mask. Men faced consequences too. A knight too soft-spoken or flamboyantly dressed risked being labeled unmanly, a vague insult that could sink prospects in a hierarchy-obsessed society. Failing to look the part, too scarred, too slouched, meant mockery or accusations of effeminacy, as dangerous as your lapses into visible humanity. A second light joke, codpieces so bold they needed laws, sounds like medieval manscaping had its own wardrobe malfunction hearings. Talk about legislating swagger. His sword gleams, more prop than weapon in this setting, but it completes the image. A godly knight, groomed to gleam, his moral worth tied to his polished boots and unblemished jaw. Yet, beneath the shine, you know the toll. Calluses from training, bruises from armor, the strain of suppressing emotion to seem brave yet courteous. Historians still argue whether courtly love's ideals shaped real men's behaviors or were poetic fantasies, with some citing conduct manuals demanding performative chivalry, while others point to private letters mocking the pressure to pose as lovesick heroes. Evidence from armor designs shows ergonomic tweaks for visual flair, suggesting widespread effort. But the debate lingers. Romantic control or cultural caricature? A third light joke. Knights plucking brows. Bet they called it battle prep to avoid the side eye. Nothing says valor like a well-groomed hairline. You rise, your fragility mirroring his crafted strength, as the hall's focus shifts to the next act, the body-binding blues of your gown, where early corsets squeeze you into shapes that scream submission over sense. Another shared burden in this relentless pageant. As he strides off, cloak billowing just right, you adjust your veil, the weight of your bindings tugging at your ribs, a prelude to the rigid garments awaiting scrutiny. Quirky fact: some men used scented oils on beards to mimic women's perfume tricks, masking battlefield sweat with rose notes for courtly cred. And fringe tales from French courts whisper of knights fainting from tight hose, their heroic frames crumpling under fashion's grip, proving pain-crossed genders in this aesthetic arms race. You glide forward, the hall's eyes tracking both your frailty and his fortitude, two sides of the same punishing coin. Historians debate whether masculine standards rivaled women's in rigor, with wardrobe accounts showing equal investment in male finery, yet sermons sparing men the harshest moral links to looks. Either way, you both bear the scars, hidden beneath layers, as the next binding battle looms. Either way, you both bear the scars, hidden beneath layers, as the next binding battle looms. You glide from the hall back to your chamber, the knight's polished stride fading into the crowd, but the weight of your gown drags like a silent reprimand, its tight laces digging into your ribs with every careful breath. The real battle now is the body-binding blues, where early corset precursors, those rigid, unyielding undergarments known as cots or kirtles, squeeze your torso into a shape that screams divine order over human comfort, molding you into a silhouette that's less about you and more about the patriarchal pageantry that dictates every curve. You brace against the bedpost, exhaling sharply as your maid tugs the laces tighter, the fabric compressing your waist into an elongated, reed-like form. Because in this medieval world, a woman's body isn't meant to move freely. It's meant to be sculpted, restrained, a living statue of submission and sanctity. The kirtle bites, its stiff reeds or whalebone strips. Proto-corsets, not yet fully formed but already merciless, pressing against your sides, bruising where they meet flesh, while the linen shift beneath offers scant protection from the chafe. You suck in your breath, feeling your ribs protest, as the goal crystallizes. A long, narrow torso, shoulders sloping gently, hips just rounded enough to hint at fertility without suggesting strength. It's not elegance, it's engineering, turning you into a delicate column that floats rather than walks, a shape that whispers, "I exist for display, not defiance." The outer gown adds another layer, heavy with velvet and embroidery, weighing like a velvet anvil, its hem threatening to trip you if you dare stride too boldly. You practice small steps, the sensory toll immediate. A dull ache in your lower back, a faint wheeze as breathing becomes a luxury, not a given. Mainstream history records this in the household ledgers of the Duchess of Berry, whose ladies spent hours daily lacing her into garments so stiff she could barely sit, their adjustments tailored to each event, looser for private suppers, tighter for public processions to showcase saintly poise, as chronicled in 14th century French accounts. You'd endure the same, your maid pulling until your waist narrows to a handspan, the silhouette screaming fragility while your insides beg for mercy. A light joke to loosen the grip. If modern shapewear feels like a hug, medieval kirtles were a full-on chokehold. Nothing says graceful like gasping for air in style. As the laces knot, you feel the fabric's rigidity lock you upright. Posture perfect but punishing, each movement calculated to avoid ripping seams or fainting mid-curtsy. The ideal isn't comfort, but control. Your body reshaped to fit society's script, modest, contained, ornamental, never suggesting you could run, fight, or even bend to pick up a dropped pin without a servant's aid. Some gowns, by the late 15th century, were so inflexible you'd recline rather than sit, your frame a fragile reed in a storm of scrutiny. You recall the sensory strain, sweat pooling under layers, the itch of embroidery scratching through thin shifts, yet you smile faintly because slumping would be a sin worse than gluttony. Quirky tidbit. In some households, girls as young as 12 were introduced to light lacing, training them early to tolerate the squeeze, a tradition that warped ribs over decades, as seen in skeletal remains of noble women. And a fringe tale from Venice whispers of a lady whose kirtle was reinforced with metal strips, so rigid she collapsed during a dance, her servants swearing it was divine ecstasy to save face. More like fashion's iron grip, literally. Modern aside, it's like today's bodycon dresses. But imagine if they came with a user manual and a prayer for oxygen. Medieval Spanx. But make it a moral mandate. The gown settles, heavy as expectation, and you glide to the mirror, the elongated torso giving you height, fragility, a hint of the ethereal statues in church naves. But the cost lingers, bruises blooming under fabric, lungs shallow from constraint, a constant reminder that beauty here is a cage, not a canvas. A second light joke, corsets as cardio? Forget jogging. Try breathing in a kirtle for an hour, and you'll burn calories just surviving the squeeze. The pressure wasn't just self-inflicted. Parents, suitors, and priests pushed it, tying marriageability to a cinched waist, as if love hinged on how little space you occupied. You catch your breath, or what's left of it, feeling the gown's weight as both armor and anchor, transforming you into the ideal while stealing your ease. The binding reinforces every earlier ritual, pale skin, high forehead, hidden teeth, all converging to shrink you into a symbol of virtue where movement itself becomes a rebellion. Historians still argue whether these garments caused lasting harm or were less restrictive than later corsets, with some citing skeletal evidence of compressed organs in elite women, others suggesting looser variants allowed practicality, especially in pregnancy, as seen in household inventories. The debate persists: deliberate torture or exaggerated trope? A third light joke: Curtains so tight you can't sneeze? Good. Sneezing might be mistaken for emotion, and we can't have that ruining your saintly silhouette. You step toward the door, each move a study in stillness, the binding blues echoing in every creak of bone and fabric. The next battle looms. Your lips, that delicate battlefield where color and size signal modesty or mischief, demanding subtle tints to balance saintly restraint with whispered allure. As you pass a servant, the gown's hem brushes the floor, a soft rustle masking the ache beneath, your body a sculpted shrine to society's whims. Quirky fact, some kirtles had detachable panels for pregnancy, a rare nod to function, but only if you could afford the tailor's finesse. And fringe stories from Castile describe a noblewoman whose lacing caused a fainting spell mid-mass, spun as holy rapture by quick-witted maids, though her diary hinted at sheer exhaustion from the bind. You nod to a passing lady, her gown cinched to mirror yours, a shared struggle under velvet veils. Historians debate whether binding was universal or elite, with merchant-class women adopting lighter versions per wardrobe records, yet rural accounts suggesting freedom from such constraints. Either way, you move forward, ribs protesting, lips awaiting their own coded performance in this endless pageant of perfection. You glide forward, ribs protesting, lips awaiting their own coded performance in this endless pageant of perfection. But as you catch a servant's fleeting glance in the corridor's polished shield, hung as decoration but doubling as a merciless mirror, your focus sharpens on that subtle battlefield. Your lips, those twin sentinels of the mouth that must navigate the treacherous waters between modesty and mischief, their size, shape, and faint tint decoding messages of virtue or veiled vice before you even part them to speak. You pause under a flickering sconce, the light casting soft shadows that accentuate their natural curve, and dip a finger into a tiny pot of berry balm, patting it on with the lightest touch to add just a whisper of color. Because in this medieval tapestry of signals, too bold a hue could brand you as brazen, while none at all might fade you into irrelevance. Your mouth, a silent herald of your soul's secrets. The lips aren't mere flesh. They're a lexicon, every plumpness or purse a potential proclamation in a world where beauty doubles as moral semaphore. You blend the balm carefully, ensuring it's subtle, a pale pink that evokes rose petals rather than ripe fruit, because bright red whispers of earthly lust, a siren call that could draw priestly frowns or courtly scandals. Small, pursed lips signal self-restraint, discretion woven into their tight line, while fuller ones hint at unspoken appetites, literal hunger or metaphorical yearnings that might label you as too sensual, too proud, unfit for the saintly mold. You practice in the mirror's haze, curving them into a demure seal, no pout or smirk, just a soft boundary that guards the teeth and tongue, because an open laugh or visible grin could unravel the facade, exposing you as immodest, even unfeminine, in a society that prizes mystery over mirth. Mainstream folklore drives this home in tales where painted lips bleed lies, as one 13th century sermon warned, equating cosmetics with deception. Yet subtle tints from beet juice or alkanet root were tolerated in elite circles like those of Burgundy, where court records show women using them to balance piety with presence. You'd apply where the fingers linger, blotting excess to avoid accusations of vanity. The balm's faint aroma of honey and clove adding an invisible layer of allure without overt invitation. Too generous a mouth, and gossip swirls. You're opinionated, gluttonous, perhaps promiscuous, small and closed, and you're modest, a soft zephyr of a person whose words waft rather than wound. A light joke to sweeten the seal, lips as the mouth's gatekeepers. In medieval terms, they were more like bouncers, keep it exclusive, or risk a riot of rumors at your virtue's door. As the balm sets, soft and satiny against your skin, you recall the coded rituals. In French and Italian courts, a light stain applied, given a suitor could be a flirtation rite. Fingers hovering just long enough to spark curiosity without scandal, turning application into artful tease, but too dark. And you're painted as deceptive, demonic even, your mouth a trap for unwary souls. Symbolic size mattered too, pursed and petite for control, wide and full a warning of excess, as if genetics dictated destiny. You trace yours gently, ensuring the tint catches light without glaring, an equilibrium where modesty meets hidden temptation, because purity demands you look desirable yet distant, inviting admiration without the mess of actual desire. Quirky tidbit: some households had lip color codes for occasions, lighter for day prayers, a deeper blot for evening feasts under dim candles, where firelight softened the hue into flushed innocence rather than bold intent. And a fringe theory posits that balm dabbing became a ritual signal, a woman's fingers lingering to convey interest subtly, as whispered in Venetian chronicles, where courtigiani mastered it for calculated charm without crossing into vulgarity. Modern aside, it's like today's lip liner, hacks for definition. But imagine if overlining meant risking a witchcraft whisper. Nothing plumps the drama like demonic undertones. The corridor quiets as servants pass, their eyes averting from your poised form, but you feel the balm's gentle stickiness, a tactile cue that your lips now speak volumes in silence. Modest yet magnetic, a line drawn between saint and subtle siren. Too much smile, and you're inappropriate. Too little, and you're cold. The perfect upturn of a Mona Lisa mystery that hides temptations beneath. A second light joke: full lips as mouthfuls of trouble. Medieval matchmakers probably skipped them, fearing they'd chew through alliances faster than a feast day pie. You'd avoid grinning widely at banquets, opting for tight-lipped nods that deepen envy without inciting it. Your mouth a coded lock where size and shade guard hidden depths. But the cruelty curls deeper. A rival's exaggerated portrait could doom negotiations by inflating lip size, implying sensuality that sank suitors. As one French account details a noblewoman convent-bound after such sabotage, her features speaking louder than facts. You blot once more, the linen absorbing excess, leaving a tint that tempts without trapping, a balance where modesty veils mischief, your lips a battlefield won through whispers rather than wars. As you resume your glide, the balm's scent lingers like a secret, the law of lip language embedding in every restrained word. Historians still argue whether tinting was rare, reserved for fallen performers, or more common in subtle forms among the elite, with some citing cosmetic imports as proof of widespread use, others insisting moral treatises exaggerated to vilify, and diaries showing clever concealments like wine residue rubs for natural flush. Evidence from household pots reveals berry stains on elite artifacts. But the debate endures: vice or veiled virtue? A third light joke: lips sealed with balm, perfect for keeping secrets, or just avoiding chapped confessions in drafty castles. You turn a corner, the hall opening to more courtiers, your tinted lips a modest mystery ready for scrutiny. As the next layer unfolds, the visage-virtue link, where beauty equates moral worth, flaws flagging inner faults in this judgmental gaze. As a knight nods, his eyes flicking to your mouth's subtle sheen, you lower your gaze, the code holding firm amid hidden temptations. Quirky fact: open laughter with teeth visible. Scandalous, equated to unfeminine joy. Sermons urging suppression to preserve the delicate balance, turning giggles into guarded graces. And fringe stories from Provence detail a woman shunned for loud lips, her marriage crumbling over a portrait's exaggeration, proving size signaled destiny in painted propaganda. You mingle, lips a line of law, the endless pageant pressing on. Historians debate whether lip standards were self-enforced or clergy-driven, with conduct books pushing pursed modesty for all, yet private correspondences hinting at rebellious reds in shadowed soirees. Either way, you embody the code, subtle and signaling, as virtue's visual verdict awaits. You mingle, lips a line of law, the endless pageant pressing on. But as you catch a courtier's approving nod, his eyes appraising your subtle tint like a merchant weighing gold, the deeper equation sinks in, a silent calculus where your physical beauty isn't just adornment, it's a verdict on your very soul, equating flawless features to moral worth in a system that brands flaws as inner corruption waiting to surface. You feel it in the hall's weighted air, thick with incense and unspoken judgments, where every glance dissects you not for who you are, but for what your skin, your stance, your symmetry proclaim about your character. Because in this medieval mindset, attractiveness isn't luck, it's divine endorsement, a visible stamp of virtue that separates the blessed from the blemished, the godly from the suspect. The chatter swells around you, ladies in veils murmuring like wind through cloisters, but you hold your pose, aware that your pale complexion and high brow aren't mere style, they're proof of providence, a body painted by God to reflect inner grace. Smooth skin means a soul unscarred by sin. Visible veins pulse with noble blood, untarnished by labor's taint. You trace a finger along your sleeve, feeling the rich fabric that amplifies this link. Wealth buys the lotions, the seclusion, the diets that craft this perfection, turning beauty into a class marker where peasants' rough hands and sun-marked faces imply moral inferiority, their flaws evidence of divine disfavor. It's a cruel arithmetic. Look good, and you're assumed good. Falter with a scar or asymmetry, and whispers swirl of hidden wickedness, a crooked nose hinting at deceit, a birthmark branding you cursed. You drift to a window alcove, the cool stone pressing against your back like a confessor's hand, gazing at the courtyard where servants toil under the sun, their tanned arms a stark contrast to your guarded pallor. This visage-virtue fusion runs deep, theologians scribbling treatises that beauty mirrors the soul's state, flaws as outer echoes of inner rot, Because if God made you fair, it's a sign of favor. If not, perhaps you're paying for ancestral sins. You feel the weight in your reflection, the bronze tray nearby catching your unblemished cheek, a testament to hours of pain that buys this blessing. Mainstream history embodies this in the works of Christine de Pizan, one of the era's rare female voices, who challenged the beauty-virtue link in her writings, arguing that women should be judged by deeds over looks, a radical push against the doctrine that tied physical allure to spiritual standing, as seen in 15th century philosophical texts. A light joke to lighten the scrutiny. If beauty's the soul's mirror, medieval folks must have thought warts were windows to wickedness. Nothing like a pimple popping up to ruin your eternal report card. But the system persists, your value hinging on this visual morality, where rounded features might suggest indulgence, sharp ones cunning, every trait a potential tell. You'd hide a mole with powder, fearing it marks demonic influence, or straighten your posture to avoid slouches' implication of laziness. Because in this gaze-heavy game, your body narrates your ethics before you speak. The irony curls. Men pen these rules, projecting fantasies onto you, yet demand you embody them flawlessly. Flaws forgiven in their beards, but fatal in your freckles. As a bishop passes, his eyes lingering on your serene face, you lower your gaze, the alcove's draft stirring your veil like a spectral breath. This connection made life a perpetual audit, where aging lines weren't just time's touch, but moral slippage, a sagging jaw hinting at sagging virtue. You'd pray for clear skin, not vanity, but survival, because ugliness invited fear. Witches with hooked noses, crones with wild hair, their deformities proof of corruption in folklore that bled into real accusations. Quirky tidbit. In 13th century Spain, a noblewoman accused a rival of witchcraft after a rash marred her face. The affliction presented as evidence of guilt in court records, her social fall not from deeds but dermis, beauty as both shield and sword. And a fringe theory from theological fringes posits that beauty equaled goodness as a replacement for women's limited power, a currency in a propertyless existence, turning faces into fortunes or follies. You exhale softly, the hall's hum fading as you ponder the sensory sting, a faint itch from the ceruse, a reminder that this virtue is painted on, fragile as the illusions it upholds. Flaws aren't neutral, they're omens. A limp suggests twisted intentions. Scars speak of strife with fate. Modern aside, it's like today's glow-up culture. But instead of filters fixing flaws, you'd risk exile if your filter, literal powder, cracked, revealing the human heresy beneath. The church amplified it, saints painted flawless, while sinners grotesque. Sermons equating outer harmony to inner peace, a doctrine that kept you vigilant, every mirror a moral checkpoint. A second light joke. Birthmarks as devil's kisses. Sounds cute until it lands you in the stocks. Nothing spices a family tree like asymmetrical ancestry alerts. You'd aspire to this ideal, knowing it's rigged. Wealth buys the tools to fake it. Poverty exposes truths that doom the lower born. A hierarchy where beauty buys belief in your benevolence. One pock scar, and you're pitied or feared. Perfect pause, and doors open, suitors kneel. God smiles, or so they say. The alcove's shadow lengthens, mirroring the doubts creeping in. Is this divine design or human delusion? You smooth your gown, feeling the virtue-visaged tie bind tighter than any kirtle. Flaws not forgiven, but flagged as failings. Historians still argue whether this beauty-morality link was taken literally or symbolically convenient, some citing philosophical texts as proof of widespread belief, others viewing it as elite propaganda to justify inequality, with art exaggerating ideals, while real letters show skeptics like Christine pushing back. Evidence from treatises links it to class control, but the debate endures. Spiritual truth or social tool? A third light joke. Flaws implying corruption? Bet asymmetrical folks had the best alibis. Sorry, my soul's lopsided today. You step back into the flow, the equation echoing in every appraising eye as the final law looms. Fashion's fiascos, where sumptuary rules police your silks to enforce divides, turning attire into another arena of virtue's visual verdict. As a lady compliments your unblemished glow, you nod modestly, the connection pulsing like a vein beneath pale skin. Quirky fact, theologians like those in Aquinas's circle wrote that divine favor showed in features, a birthmark, potentially a curse mark, needing penance, turning dermatology into destiny. And fringe stories from Aquitaine courts detail Eleanor's ladies selected for virtuous symmetry, their poise a moral mirror that elevated the queen's image. You mingle onward, the visage's verdict a silent shadow, flaws forever linked to faults in this unforgiving frame. Historians debate whether it was empowered through aspiration or crushed via impossible standards, with women's writings like Christine's challenging it, yet art perpetuating the myth. Either way, you carry it, beautiful and burdened, as the law's lash awaits. You carry it, beautiful and burdened, as the law's lash awaits, its rules woven into the very fabric of your gown, dictating not just how you look, but who you're allowed to be in this rigid medieval hierarchy. You pause in the hall, the torchlight catching the subtle sheen of your silk sleeves, carefully chosen to dazzle without defying the sumptuary laws, those fashion fiats that police every thread to enforce class divides and moral piety, turning your wardrobe into a battlefield where one wrong stitch could spark scandal or seize your status. You smooth the embroidery, ensuring no forbidden gold glints too brightly, because in this world, dressing above your rank isn't just vanity. It's a crime, a sartorial sin that screams ambition over obedience, and the consequences sting sharper than any kirtle's laces. The air hums with feast day preparations, servants bustling with trays of spiced wine, but you feel the weight of scrutiny, every eye a potential clerk, noting if your belt's too ornate or your veil too lavish for your station. Sumptuary laws, etched by monarchs and councils, regulate personal splendor, ensuring peasants don't drape themselves in noble silks, and nobles don't outshine royalty. Your gown, rich yet restrained, treads the line, velvet for wealth, but muted blue to nod at Marian modesty, avoiding the Tyrian purple or saffron yellow reserved for queens or clergy. You recall the law's specifics. Under Edward III's England, only knights' daughters could wear fur, while Florence banned merchant women from gold belts, as documented in 14th century statutes, forcing you to check every accessory for compliance, lest you face fines public shaming, or the humiliation of having your sleeves stripped in the market square. A light joke to ease the legal leash. Sumptuary laws as medieval fashion police. Imagine getting arrested for too much sparkle. Nothing says criminal like a contraband sequin. You adjust your belt, its simple silver clasp, safe but stylish. Knowing excess could mark you as proud. A fast track to sermons on vanity's perils. Colors carry codes. Deep reds signal power but risk sensuality. Bright ones flirt with sin, while blue cloaks you in holy humility. Layering, too, is a status flex. Too many folds, and you're arrogant. Too few, and you're plain. A delicate dance where wealth must shine without shouting. Your gown's embroidery is tasteful, but you double-check, recalling a Venetian woman fined for pearls hidden in her sleeve linings. As court records note, her secret luxury deemed a prideful thought crime, proving even concealed opulence invited punishment. The sensory weight hits, the gown's heft pulls at your shoulders, its hem brushing the floor like a whispered warning, each step a reminder to stay within bounds. These laws weren't just about modesty. They were control, keeping classes distinct and women contained, their finery a leash to curb unruly ambition. You'd avoid over-embellished hennins, those cone-shaped hats, since some towns banned them for non-nobles, clerks patrolling streets like medieval-style critics, their quills sharper than swords. Quirky tidbit. In 15th century London, a woman claimed her lace was a cousin's gift to dodge a fine, but officials scoffed. Lace too precious to share, as per sumptuary logs. A fashion fib that failed spectacularly. And a fringe theory suggests that these laws were loosely enforced, more symbolic than punitive. Yet, accounts of public shaming, such as a widow being forced to confess for wearing a wimpleless pride, show that enforcement could cut deep, especially for women already under the microscope of virtue. You glide through the hall, the fabrics rustle a soft compliance, but the paradox gnaws. You're expected to dazzle, yet defer. Be elegant, yet not excessive. A masterpiece painted with half the palette banned. Widows faced extra rules, dull colors mandated to color code grief, while feast day finery for all women was capped to prevent disorderly allure, as Italian ordinances decreed. A second light joke. Too much lace? Better pray for forgiveness before the tailor's hauled to court. Nothing ruins a party like a summons for stitching sins. The laws targeted women hardest, their beauty a potential spark for chaos, their silks a threat to order, fear lurking that a well-dressed woman might wield too much power or tempt too many hearts. As you nod to a passing noble, his fur-trimmed cloak a legal flex you can't match, you feel the law's invisible lash, class and piety policing every seam. Historians still debate whether sumptuary laws were practical barriers or moral posturing. Some cite lax enforcement in rural areas, while others point to urban fines and tailor trials as evidence of vigilance. Wardrobe inventories show compliance, but also clever workarounds, such as detachable trims for quick modesty adjustments. The debate lingers, control or cautionary tale. You adjust your veil, ensuring it falls within non-scandalous limits. The sensory strain of heavy fabric, a reminder that beauty here is a legal tightrope, not a choice. A third light joke. Sumptuary laws, banning bright reds. Bet they'd have a field day with today's neon athleisure. good luck legislating that glow. You move toward the feast, the hall's warmth wrapping you like judgment, each step a calculated glide to prove you belong without breaking the rules. The laws bind tighter than any kirtle, your body a canvas for compliance. But beneath the silk, a quiet rebellion stirs, not in defiance, but in enduring, in outlasting the system that measures your worth by your wardrobe's weight. The feast fades, and you slip back to your chamber, the embers in the hearth glowing soft as whispers, casting flickers on the stone walls that feel like the day's last judgments settling into silence. You sit, unpinning your veil, letting it slide like a sigh to the floor, the heavy gown loosening as your maid unlaces the kirtle, each tug a small release from the day's bindings. The air cools your skin, raw from cerus and restraint, and you breathe deeper, the weight of laws, looks, and lies lifting, if only for this quiet hour. Your reflection in the bronze mirror shows lines unhidden, a face that's yours, tired, human, alive. The world demanded you be a saint, a statue, a symbol. But here, in the candle's waning glow, you're just you, unbound, unjudged. The rules fade with the light, their harsh edges softening as your thoughts drift, untethered from the need to be seen or saved. You close your eyes, the hum of the night wrapping you gently, and for now, you rest, free from the script that shaped your day, your body, a story you'll write tomorrow, not one etched by others' hands. Sleep comes slowly, a gift earned, as the medieval world's demands dissolve into dreams where you walk barefoot, hair loose, simply yourself.